Okay, I think it's a good time to get started. We are minus one speaker, but I'm hoping that he will be able to dial in the next couple of minutes. So hello to everybody dialed in and watching live. Thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to our third and final Accelerate 2021 Ask Me Anything session. I'm going to be quite sad when these are over. They've been really brightening up my lockdown life, to be honest. If you've been on the Accelerate journey with us over the past couple of weeks, then welcome back. If this is the first time that you've joined us, then it's great to have you on board. And don't worry, you can catch up on everything you've missed with our on-demand recordings. My name's Fiona. I'm Head of Marketing at Loyalty Lion. Today, we're bringing you our final four 2021 trends, and we have our final four e-commerce experts to tell us everything about them as well. Before I introduce our panel, just a quick bit.
Oh, sorry for that.
No problem at all. Before I introduce our panel, just a quick bit of housekeeping. Firstly, thank you to all those who submitted questions in advance. If you didn't manage to do that, it's not too late. You can still ask over the Q&A here on Zoom, or you can tweet us at LoyaltyLionHQ using the hashtag Accelerate2021. Hopefully we'll get to answer all of your questions within the session, but if we don't get to yours, then stay tuned for our follow-up content, or please feel free to reach out to us or our speakers via email and social as well. So let me introduce our panelists. Today, I am joined by Mike Potter from Rewind, Alison Kelly from Attentive, Oliver Galang from Shoelace, and Callum McKeefery from Reviews. Very warm welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for making the time for today's session as well. So I think let's kick things off with a quick round of introductions. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And then if I could ask each of you to introduce yourselves and your business and give us a lightning quick overview of the trend that you think is going to be big in 2021. Mike, could you possibly kick us off?
Sure. So my name is Mike Potter. I'm the CEO at Rewind. We are a cloud-to-cloud backup solution. We started on Shopify in 2015. We've since expanded to cover BigCommerce, QuickBooks Online, and a few other SaaS platforms coming down the pipeline like Zendesk and Trello and others. In terms of the biggest trend, I think, I mean, from our perspective, security is going to be the number one thing, right? And I think as people have expanded the number of apps that they're using in their Shopify stores or their e-commerce stores, as more people are working on those stores, as COVID's put those people into very dispersed locations, it's a lot easier these days to make mistakes and to have people, take advantage of those mistakes. So from our perspective, I think online security continues to be the number one concern that people have for their SaaS applications.
Absolutely. I think I saw in a Shopify blog just earlier today that people have an average of 6 apps from the Shopify App Store at least running on their stores. So there's definitely a lot to consider bringing all those together. Fantastic. Alison, over to you next.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Alison Kelly. I am Head of Growth Strategy at Attentive. Attentive is a text message marketing platform that works exclusively with retail e-commerce brands, food and beverage, and then the rising bud of media and publishing brands that we've gotten to work for. We're headquartered out of New York City, and we work with over 2,700 customers to date. We were founded in 2017. So a lot of fast growth over the period of time. And I'd say that probably leads into, you guys can probably guess what my 2021 prediction is. Increased mobile adoption. I think that we knew that was already happening. Our own consumer behavior tells us that, right? But with the pandemic, the increase in mobile just drastically went at an accelerated pace. And so 2021 trends, we're going to see even more adoption of mobile, and that means new adoption and faster adoption of technology such as text, maybe PWAs, headless commerce, those sorts of things for mobile.
Brilliant. Thanks, Alison. Callum, you're next on my screen.
Hi, thank you for joining. Sorry for being late onto the call. I do apologise. My name's Callum. I'm the CEO and founder of Reviews.io. And I founded Reviews.io with my wife in 2013, and we've grown to become one of the largest online review platforms available. We've got 8,000 clients, and we have offices now in the UK, in Leicester, Berlin, in Germany, Sydney in Australia, and LA in the US. Probably the biggest thing that we're seeing on the horizon is it's always been big for us, which is trust. So trust has been a major factor for us in 2021, and how we can build more trust into each purchase. The other thing we're seeing, which has become massive, is video reviews. Video reviews have become absolutely huge in 2020, and we expect them to get much bigger in 2021.
Fantastic, thank you. I had no idea you're a family-run business initially. That's awesome.
Yeah. We started. We're a pure bootstrap business, and it was just me and my wife when we started.
Oh yeah, no, I didn't realize that. Brilliant. What a story. Great, and thank you. And Oliver, how about you?
Hi friends, my name is Oliver. I'm a senior media buyer at Shoelace. We're a Shopify application and digital marketing solution, specifically for our e-commerce and direct-to-consumer brands. Our trend that we're really focusing on, specifically for paid social, is the stress for great creative. We found that great creatives will outperform great retargeting, and so an optimal solution is actually great creatives and bad retargeting will outperform great retargeting with bad creatives time and time again. That creatives will move the needle further for you. And I know a couple of questions right now are about iOS 14 and the amount of data that we're losing. And creatives will take you a lot further than your targeting will currently. And so that's the biggest trend I want everyone to focus on.
Brilliant, thank you. I know that's one question that came up last week and we didn't have time for, so I'm sure we've got some people who are very eager to talk about that one. Great, so now we have our introductions out of the way and we know what our trends are, we'll move on to the questions that we've had submitted from the audience. Our first one is from Nicole, and she would like to know, how do you compete for the limited attention span of your potential customers when 2020 saw a rapid increase in the number of regular emails in everyone's inbox? So with growth in email, how do you compete for a limited attention span? Alison, can we come to you first on that one?
Yeah, no, happy to answer that specifically. So a little bit of background. I have been in messaging specifically for close to a decade, working in all different types of technologies, email included. And one of the things that is really interesting that started to emerge as a trend that the industry itself started to track on probably about 7 years or so ago is how many email addresses did people have? People like me, people like everybody here on this call. And so from those of you as panelists, quick poll, how many of you have over 4 email addresses associated with you, professional, personal? Quick show of hands.
I probably use 4 different.
Yeah, at least 4, right? So do most people out there in the world as we know it. My 17-year-old daughter actually has 3, which is crazy. And so, you know, when we think about that, we think about, well, gosh, there's a lot of distraction. There's a lot of clutter coming into all of our different inboxes. And if you have more than 3, 4, then guess what? You have a lot of noise coming through. But for those of you also too, as panelists and maybe out in the audience, how many of you have more than 1 cell phone number? Quick show of hands, yes, no.
No.
All right. What does that say? All right, so when you start to think about how to get out of the clutter, how to escape from the noise, think about the device that folks like you and I probably sleep with. I've been sleeping with my phone for 15 years, which is not a good habit to start. I will say that. Think about the app that we're all on day in and day out. It's our text app. When you look at maybe your Apple device, you should get some sort of report sent to you. Sunday usually is the day that Apple sends over this scary push that it appears and it says, you've spent 4 hours and 15 minutes on your phone. Don't just shame yourself mentally then, because I do that too. I'm like, oh my God, I had a 56% increase in my time on my phone last week. Open it up next time and go look and see where you're actually spending a good bit of your time. I'm going to guarantee you your text app is going to fall somewhere between number 3 to number 10. And so if you want to get out of the noise and you want to be able to actually reach people and you want to do it in a meaningful way, go to the first place where they're already communicating, and that's text message marketing. Think about how to be able to connect with people in a way that's not just so spammy, not just so promo driven, but connect in a way that's truly meaningful with the messages that you're putting in text as well. We'll talk about that, I'm sure, a little bit later, but it's a really easy way to start to think about how to get out of the noise. And candidly, the answer is pretty clear because we can look at our own personal habits and say, God, that would be a lot better if we just had this here, you know, for this particular company that maybe you have a closer affinity with too as yourself as a consumer.
Brilliant. Brilliant, thank you. Yeah, I can't wait for that notification to come through now. I want to have a look.
Go check it out. Don't be scared.
Amazing. Callum, do you have anything to follow up with that one?
Yeah, I think I agree with Alison in a way, really, because SMS for our businesses became a huge part of sending, asking for feedback. We send about 2 million emails per day at the moment, asking for a review, asking for feedback, and about 10% of that is SMS. It has grown rapidly in 2020 for us, but there's something about SMS where the customer's got to be expecting an SMS. That's the thing. You can't just, it's not perfect for every retailer. SMS is not perfect for every retailer, but for some retailers where they're very mobile focused, it works. So we're still seeing really good conversion via email, and timing. Timing is everything. Nobody wants to receive a random SMS weeks and weeks after. They want to be kind of still in the purchasing journey, or just post purchasing journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think especially, where, and, Nicole's asked about a limited attention span. So actually getting in there at the right time is so important, because you're going to lose that attention not too long after a purchase. So,
yeah, massively. So we at Reviews, we tweak the delays depending on the business and depending on the delivery. And we're even tweaking it further now. On things outside of our control, almost like events and weather and things like this, will actually push and pull the delays both ways. Will shorten it and push it out. So it's very interesting. Timing is everything with email and SMS delivery.
Absolutely. Mike and Oliver, did you have anything else you wanted to add on competing for limited attention span?
No, I mean, I think Alison and Callum sort of covered it, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Perfect. I think the only thing I want to add here is the fact that the limited attention span just stresses the importance of just being on multiple channels, being on SMS, being on multiple touch points. There's no like one silver bullet solution to invest all of your marketing investment into. Your clients and your customers are on a multitude of different channels, and limited attention spans and being at all of them is key.
I think that's right. And when I just look at my own usage, you just have to catch me in one mood, and I want an email, different mood, and I don't want to go anywhere near my inbox. That's a very good point. Fantastic. Thank you, guys. We'll move on to our second question. So I can't put a name to this because it's come from several different merchants, but Oliver, this one probably is one for you to begin with. How does the impact of Apple blocking third-party cookies impact the digital marketing world and e-commerce conversions? I know this has been a hot topic around Loyalty Line lately.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think this is like the number one thing everyone's talking about. Like, you can go on Twitter, you can talk to any agency, anyone that's in this space should be talking about this, and it's at the top of the agenda. I think to answer the question, severely, it impacts our space quite a lot. There's going to be more ambiguity regarding the data that we collect and we utilize. There's going to be less data overall, which, as we all understand, specifically talking on Facebook here, because they've been the most vocal regarding how this change is going to impact their platform, and has actually implemented a lot of changes already. We all know that their algorithm, works a lot off of the IDFAs and all the data that they collect off of our users, and the way the platform is optimized is based off of that. So I think overall, there's going to be, smaller attribution windows. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's going to be a lot more assumptions that you'll have to make. The targets that you set are going to have to change. The way you interpret your data, not just on Facebook, but on all paid social channels, like your targets, your KPIs, your 5x return on ad spend last month might be a 2x return on ad spend this month. And that might not be inherently bad, right? Because at the end of the day, the conversation is about what drives bottom line revenue, right, for your paid social channels. So if last month you got a 5x and this month you got 2x, and you haven't changed anything to your marketing stack, and you ended up with the same revenue, then 2x is just your old 5x. And then that's just what Facebook is able to report on. And also because of this less reliant, Facebook data. It's going to be increased reliance on your own first party data. So your own collection of emails, your collection of SMS phone numbers, that stuff becomes a lot more important because that's stuff that you can funnel into Facebook or other paid social channels yourself and then leverage and utilize that data. But I think, in overall the space, yes, it's impacted, but as with most things in this space, it's a moving target. We just need to adapt, pivot, adjust where we're looking at numbers, how we're interpreting numbers. I think the truth is, like, we've been really spoiled in terms of our attribution and in terms of how we're able to associate revenue and purchases directly with this very specific advertisement. And now we have to kind of go the line of like more traditional stuff where we kind of have to assume that an increase in ad spend in a specific channel resulted in a specific increase in revenue. So I think the conversation changes a whole lot and how we set things up.
I think it's an interesting way of looking at it, that we've been spoiled. I've not heard that before, but I like it. It's probably very true, and perhaps it'll push us all to think a bit more carefully about the way with different channels and what we spend on. Does anybody? That was a very ad specific question, but does anybody want to add to that at all?
I think that you're exactly right, Oliver. You've got to. People are going to have to feel out how their ads are performing. And they're not going to be able to rely on the metrics as they have previously, definitely. And I think that good digital marketing managers are good ones. Their value is going to go up quite dramatically.
I agree. And to add on to that too, I would be very careful in the space for people selling like secret sauces or secret solutions to solve this. Like the real ones are testing things. The real value is actually like free content online. Like you can go on Twitter and follow the right people in this space, and we're all releasing what we're currently doing and testing as to how to solve this, whether that's testing out different attribution models, testing out different attribution software, testing out things with the conversion API to funnel data back into Facebook. There's a ton of solutions that we're currently testing with no concrete answer. So like that would be my key takeaway here, is that currently, like Google just released a statement this morning that they're going to have a webinar about this next week, right? And so like Google's a huge person in the space, right? So Facebook's been very vocal about this, but this affects all our platforms, right? So no one has a solution just yet. The real guys, the guys at the forefront, are the ones just testing everything.
I think as a marketer, for me, it just makes me think of Google algorithm updates and SEO really. And you don't know what's coming until it hits, and then you have to react and respond. So yeah, I guess there'll be a little bit of that over the coming weeks, really. Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. Anything else to add on that one? No? Okay, brilliant. And we'll move on. Oliver, actually, this one's for you as well. So in your ebook, you talked a lot about the importance of being creative with your ads. What's the first step to putting together a creative strategy, and how do you know it's working or not working?
The first step is actually understanding the platform and ignoring any articles that say this is the top converting ad placement. Like use UGC videos. This is going to generate you the most revenue, because time and time again, every brand is going to have different successes at different parts of the funnel for their creative strategy, right? What may work for someone top of funnel might not work for you top of funnel. Like every ad account is a little bit different. So approach it with that mindset. Go into the platform, coming up with a creative strategy, understanding what does this platform accomplish? What is the content that exists on this platform? And then understand that there's social media spaces. At the end of the day, people are consuming it not for ads, but they're looking to get educated. They're looking to get inspired or simply entertained. So think about your content from an organic point of view and how do you fit into the whole space? And then don't assume one creative is going to work better than another. Have a variety of different creatives, have that blank slate, and let your data and then intuition after you spend the money dictate what will work and what you adjust and what you optimize afterwards. So that would be my first step.
That's really interesting. I love what you said about people are going to get educated. I think that's becoming ever more pertinent because people want to buy from brands that they align with, or if you are a vegetarian, you're starting to think about that when you're making even your sort of health and beauty products and choices and things like that. And I think that kind of education piece is really important. That's fascinating how you could bring that out when you're creative. And how do you know you're getting it wrong?
Yeah, I think this is the next question, right? It's like, okay, I've set up all of these creatives. We're running them. How do I know which one is performing better than the other one? I think that comes down to your targets, your KPIs, and your goals of that specific creative. If you set up a specific creative and its only purpose is to drive traffic to a specific landing page or a blog post, then that's your KPI. That's how you judge whether or not it's performing better than the other ones, right? If its goal is to generate bottom line revenue, generate return ad spend, generate purchases, and then so that's the KPI that you're measuring it against. But I think what's actually really important outside of the numbers is the structure that you set up within your paid social channel, within your paid account. People talk about like optimal account structure or the best account structure to drive the most revenue, but the best account structures are the ones that you yourself understand, the one that you can go in and test things appropriately, where you can isolate variables, test things for an appropriate amount of time, dedicate budget to a specific variable that you're trying to test, and then come to conclusion afterwards, right? That's the key to understanding which creative is actually performing the best for you to accomplish the goal that you're looking to get it to do.
Fantastic. That's some great tips. Thank you. And Alison, our next question is back to SMS. Why do brands need to invest in text message marketing if they're already seeing so much growth in e-commerce? I think we all know that last year, surprisingly or unsurprisingly, it was a great year for e-commerce. But if you're already seeing growth, then why SMS?
Yeah, I think great question. So somewhat got into this a little bit earlier too, right? When we started talking about like opening up your Apple, report that comes on Sundays, taking a look at like your own app usage too. But over Cyber Week, this past year in 2020, mobile comprised about 71% of total traffic and about 55% of total orders and conversion. That was groundbreaking for being able to look at like what did the pandemic do to our own shift in behavior as well. Because again, mobile adoption we all knew was going to continue to go up. Conversion was going to continue to go up. But even from what a lot of the analysts said, it wasn't at such a sharp incremental rate until the pandemic hit. And when we look at some of the things that we do here at Attentive, we do a lot of customer data investigation. We take a lot of emphasis on consumer behavior and what is that saying about consumer engagement in this channel. But soon we're actually releasing a report that we have taken ourselves over across 2,000 different consumers. And candidly, what we found was pretty surprising. We found that half of shoppers are already using text to connect with businesses. So if you think about it, like 50% in the US already using text to connect with brands that they have close affinity to. And then 90% of those consumers that we surveyed said that they would be willing to sign up to receive text messages from them. So again, consumer acknowledgement and consumer behavior is just trending towards this channel. And so the acceptance of being able to market to consumers in this channel is also too rising. And we expect those trends to just continue as things can continue in the pandemic and then beyond. I think we've seen that a lot of the habits that are set in place due to the pandemic, again, just got escalated and now are here to stay. And text is one of them that will make a brand successful, both in 2021 and beyond. Sounds
like the consumer has spoken on that one.
Yeah.
And that report's out in a couple of weeks, did you say?
Yeah, it is. We've actually got like a subsequent release that we're doing on different themes of that survey. So happy to share when we release the first release. You'll see a lot of it coming out soon.
Brilliant. Yeah, I look forward to that. Thank you. And our next question is less about what goes well and what can go wrong. So Mike, this one's for you. Every merchant's worst nightmare, but it isn't something that gets talked about very often, but e-commerce downtime. Can you share any examples of the impact that you've seen store downtime have on an e-commerce business in the past?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen, having been in business for like over 5 years now, we've really, honestly, I think we've seen it all. So we've seen really small mistakes cause really large problems. I remember talking to one customer who had added an H in the action item when it was add to cart, and it was added an H, and so it ended up at add to chart as the action, and completely broke her store. And that's not something that unless you know what the code is supposed to look like, that's not something that's easily found. We've seen, I think the funniest story I ever heard was a cat jumping on someone's keyboard as they were editing their theme, and causing problems and accidentally overwriting the theme. So that was a good one. We've seen business relationships gone bad. So sometimes with third-party developers, sometimes with business owners, like co-business owners or partners, occasionally with employees who've gone in and maliciously gone to cause problems. And third-party apps. There was actually a post just the other day from our friends in Ireland about some people that have compromised one of the Shopify apps and started to cause problems. And so, like, we've seen it all. Ranging downtime, simple problems are fixable in minutes or hours. We've seen downtime as long as a few days, depending on the size of the problem. Obviously those customers weren't using Rewind, but we've encountered customers who, before installing our software, have had days of downtime caused by various problems, generally third-party software interacting with their store. So yeah, it's not. I think a lot of people assume that that with the move to the cloud that everything is safe. Like that's why we moved to the cloud, so you don't have to sort of manage the systems and manage the data. The reality is that store owners are responsible for their own data. Shopify and BigCommerce and really most SaaS platforms have a policy of shared responsibility, which is, the platform is responsible for all of the data. So if the whole system goes down, they can recover it, but your specific account, your specific store, they won't go into their backups to recover that data for you. And so that's clearly why we've been able to build such a successful business. And in terms of downtime, ranges in size and complexity, but we've certainly seen things on the order of days for some of the larger problems that customers have seen.
That's so interesting. That's things in that I would never even have thought of that could go wrong. And I know that so many of my friends have got cats that won't stay away from their keyboards. So that's a good lesson for everybody when they're working from home, definitely. And that's really interesting. Thank you. Cool. So our next question comes from Chris, and Chris would like to know, what are some good ways to acquire customers without incurring a high CPA, cost per acquisition? And Callum, can I point that one to you first?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I mean, obviously with where we are in the space, in the review space, we try and get all of our clients to actually use their past customers' feedback to actually spin the sales flywheel faster. So you're using that past customers' feedback's word of mouth to actually attract new customers at a lower cost. And it works brilliantly for literally every customer who we work with on this actual flywheel solution. And we can actually track what each piece of content that they put out based off their customers' feedback and track it back to new customers. And what they're doing is they're pushing it out on their own channels, or they're pushing it out on their site themselves. But mostly we're seeing a lot of traffic and a lot of conversion from social, creating good social content around that customer's feedback, good social proof. It really spins the sales flywheel faster and lowers CPA by quite a lot.
Yeah, I'd absolutely agree with that. From a loyalty line perspective, we'd say reviews and referrals are obviously the best way to acquire new customers cost effectively. And your loyal customers are the ones who are willing to act as advocates. So get them out there and get them talking.
And what we're doing now is actually working really hard to identify who is the biggest brand advocate. So who is the most powerful brand advocate out of your past customers, out of this week's past customers? Who's that customer who's got the most power online? Who can really make a difference to your marketing effort if they post on your behalf. So we can identify now who your influencers are, and now you can build a relationship and you can really get that channel really moving forward. It's quite clever.
Interesting. So perhaps the days of sending products to all your Instagram influencers are gone, and because that's actually quite an expensive way of acquiring new customers as well.
Whereas now you can actually go, actually this. I mean, we identify so many real big influencers. We just did one company, Jane Clayton, who they were actually providing some really big fashion and home decoration bloggers with wallpaper for the different projects that they were doing. They didn't even know. We were able to identify that, and then we were able to work with those influencers as brand advocates to really spin the flywheel faster. And the content being created is really good content, and generally video or really rich image really helps, and it builds trust. You know, you can't fake a video. You know, there's so much emotion and so much trust in there. So that's the best way that we've seen at the minute of gaining new customers at a low CPA. Let your past customers do the work for you.
Absolutely, brilliant. Anybody else have any other suggestions in terms of how to acquire more customers without incurring a high CPA?
I think the only thing to add to all that, I think there's just this underlying assumption that your product is of high quality and you've had a really good customer experience up to that point, right? And so all the stuff that Callum talks about, I think, is absolutely true. But you do have to make sure that before you start asking for reviews, that that the customers are happy, that the experience that they went through was good, that the product was shipped on time. I think one of the things I've seen with the sorry, that's me. But one of the things I've seen with this pandemic has been just an increase in just poor experiences, right? And it's difficult to, it becomes really difficult to recommend somebody when you don't get a good customer experience. If the product isn't shipped on time, if the packaging comes and it doesn't look really great, like, I think everything Callum said is absolutely true, and you should do all of that, but just caution that before you do all that, make sure you've invested properly in making sure that the customer experience is really amazing. And when they get that product, that they are like really excited about it.
Yeah, I 100% agree with what you're saying, Mike. But the quickest way to learn about those places where you should be investing, so like you say, is it the packaging that's causing the negative reviews? Is it maybe that delivery? But by collecting feedback, you're learning about that quicker, and then you're able to laser target in and go, actually, let's change delivery provider, let's change packaging, and we're able to monitor that on your behalf. So we can actually say, right, you've used this delivery company here and this delivery company here, and actually your score's gone up or your score's gone down. If you're not monitoring your customers' happiness in any way, then really you've got no starting point to get the feedback to improve the business. The feedback is what should be you focusing on to drive the business forward faster. So I completely agree with what you're saying. You've got to get these things right, but to know what to get right, you've got to get the feedback. I mean, you've got to have the basics in place. Obviously, you've got to have a good delivery plan and you've got to have packaging. But once you've got those things, you really need to get feedback coming in to actually know what to focus on once your business has actually started shipping. And the quickest way to do that is by your past customers, because they will tell you, hold on, this packaging isn't right, this isn't good enough. And that's when you've got to really act. And we see companies that act on that feedback become super successful. I mean, we worked with a company in the UK called Blooming Wild for a long time when they first started. And they really listened to their customers. Every time they got a negative review, they listened to it and they worked on every different aspect. And the business is so strong because of that. So I think, feedback, the reviews, it's great. What I was saying is great in the marketing, but also it's great in getting your pain points resolved quickly as well. And it's really, you can then track it and you can track the difference that this delivery company has made on my overall satisfaction. So yeah, I totally agree. But I think that companies should collect some kind of feedback, even if it's not with a review provider at that stage, maybe in the early stages. It doesn't have to be a review provider. It could just be an email out to all of their customers saying, How did you get on? Give me some level of feedback in the early days without using a solution like ourselves.
I think it's both really good points, and for me it comes back to trust and communication. So within this pandemic, as you say, we've seen, and actually now with Brexit in the UK, we're seeing lots of brands struggling to deliver in quite the way they would. But I've got two shopping experiences going on at the moment that I'm fascinated by. One is with a very big, large, well-known brand. I think I've been waiting nearly 3 weeks for a jumper. And I've had one email that said, we're experiencing some changes due to Brexit. No clarification on when I should expect it. Do I want to cancel? Nothing at all, just one email. On the other hand, I've got a tiny brand that I was really excited to shop with for the first time, just because obviously in my role, you see these amazing brands starting out. But when I placed the order, it was clear that it was going to take a few weeks for it to be delivered because they're all made one at a time. So that was fine. Expectations set right at the outset. And then since then, I had an email about 2 days ago saying, with a picture of it being made, saying it's on its way. And I'm not, of course, I don't believe that was my product being made. It doesn't matter. Yeah. It was a lovely communication. And then I had another one today saying that it was ready. And it told me the name of the person who'd embroidered the design. So they're really putting a face to the brand, showing me the people behind the brand. And just the two are so very different. They're both going to take the same amount of time to arrive, which is, honestly, 3 to 4 weeks for both jumpers as well. Not great, but actually just the way they've gone about it, the communication has completely changed my expectations. And so I think you're both absolutely right. So roundabout way of saying, I think it's every step of that journey is important, and gathering feedback at every step is important. But it's just, if you clearly communicate, then your customers probably aren't going to have issue.
What we found on that communication thing you're talking about is really, really important. It's undervalued, I think. By keeping in touch with your customers throughout the delivery process and throughout the buying process, whether that's SMS or email. But the companies that really keep in touch with their customer when it's a longer delivery get much, much stronger user-generated content on the other end. They create much bigger brand advocates. They actually expect to be involved in that process. And they expect that you're going to ask them, hey, do you mind leaving a review, or do you mind giving us some feedback? They expect that. But then because the customer's been involved in the purchase from the outset and they've been getting these updates, they're much more inclined to leave better quality feedback and better quality reviews. They're much more likely to get their camera out and take a video and then upload that video. And we definitely see that the companies that really have good communication get much, much better user-generated content on the other end. And that then spins that flywheel faster.
I'm no prolific Instagrammer, but I was very tempted to sort of say, post a picture of this email and say, Lauren, thank you for embroidering my top. I can't wait.
Yeah, that's nice.
Really good point. Brilliant, thank you. And Alison, back to you for our next question. So as more brands are adopting text message marketing, how do you stand out from competitors on this channel? And I think it's a great question, because once somebody sees success with it, everybody will start doing it. And you've got a very limited number of characters to really make your mark. So do you have any advice for how you can stand out from the competitors?
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think that a lot of the things that we've been talking about, from a customer experience perspective, and how are things actually tying into the end consumer. Whenever you think about the customer first, and it's so super funny because even when we're writing up hey, what's our use case maybe for some new product thing, some new integration thing, the way in which I'll write it up is oftentimes taking a look and saying, hey, what do we want the experience to be to an end consumer? What do we want this experience to be like for a marketer actually working in the product? And then how are we going to measure success too? And it's the same way you should think about your text program. So just kind of throwing that out there. Sometimes building and product philosophy also equates to thinking about your text and marketing philosophy too. So for text specifically, because it is so personal, because maybe you talk with your spouse, your significant other, your mom or your dad on text, it can't be treated just like any other marketing channel outside of even having the limited characters specifically. And so you have to respect the personal nature of text first and foremost. It is so much more than just broadcasting promotions or trying to get you to buy something. I actually had a question that was posed earlier that I was answering in the chat, and the person that asked said, hey, I've never seen anything but sales stuff. Can you share some examples? And so happy to do that actually for any of you that want to connect after the webinar today and provide some examples. But I want to share with you guys that one of the things that we've seen that's come out throughout our customers that we work with this past year, and it's a continuing theme as well moving forward, is this concept of connecting for purpose in this channel. And so what that means is brands that have gone from maybe in-store to totally online, or that were online to begin with, are trying to find more ways, whether it's through UGC, whether it is through, cultural or global consciousness, or whether it's through their charitable efforts and beliefs as their core competency of their brand and their theme, to connect in this channel in just a way that, candidly, I've never even seen. And so, great example, customer tea collection promoted charitable giving in this channel in order to be able to share a little bit more with those users that had signed up for text about who their brand is, what we stand for, and here's a way to do good. And so they sent out this text campaign that essentially was based around Tuesday after Thanksgiving, right? And so they were offering to give out a outfit basically to a child in need for every purchase made throughout the day. They ended up, just from this one campaign alone, being able to donate 1,500 outfits specifically to children in need. So that's one way to do it, and anytime that you're in a business and you're a brand, we all focus a lot on, our brand image. What do we want to represent? Our creative needs to make sure that it represents that. Think about those attributes. Think about, what do you want the brand to represent? What are the things that you stand for? And use text to bring in people closer to your brand. Share more intimate things with them. The next thing that we see a lot of our customers do is use this channel for what it's truly meant for, which is, if I were to text with Mike or with Oliver or Callum, I would hope you guys would text me back. Because if not, I'd be like, you're ghosting me. You're totally ghosting me. My 17-year-old uses that term. So pardon my modern day. I'm so not the cool mom here. But you'd be ghosting me. So think about it from a consumer's perspective, right? If you text back to a brand and they don't text back to you, you're ghosting them, right? And so one of the things that we have just built in the product itself here at Attentive is two-way conversations, two-way connectivity. Because there's all different sorts of things that we've found not only help us with being able to connect with consumers via this channel in a more intimate way, but also too, that help us with really starting to see, where is this channel headed in conversation, and what can we do to continue to have this be that conversational, two-way conversation that occurs in this channel just kind of organically as it exists today too, just between folks like you and I. So there's a lot of fun things with two-way conversations, with meaningful connectivity that can lead back to standing out and lead back to increased loyalty and revenue at the same time. And I think we're really blessed to be in a position to see a lot of that across our customers here at Attentive.
Yeah, I love that. We've seen it so much in the last year with loyalty programs bringing out brand values far more. So, similarly, we've got one I absolutely love is Edgard and Cooper, and they allow you to redeem your rewards in exchange for a donation to a dog shelter, rather than it just going back into rewards for you and sales and things like that. So I think that kind of messaging is getting more and more effective, definitely. Fantastic, thank you. Oliver, I'm going to come to you for our next one. So Emma Jane, and the reason I come to you is because I think I saw some great tips for fashion brands in your trends chapter. So Emma Jane would like to know, what's your biggest piece of advice for small fashion companies looking to improve Shopify sales in 2021?
Yeah, I think I'm just going to echo some of the stuff I said earlier in the AMA, which is focus on your creatives. Take a look historically of what creatives drove you the most conversions. Take a look at what the big name brands are doing, and take a look at what your competitors are doing. I think like personally from the accounts that we have at Shoelace, a lot of UGC content is doing really well. TikTok style videos are doing really, really well, right? So, crafting videos and content that is, used on other platforms, but then you see it shared. Like, I have a lot of contacts that don't even have TikTok, but they're on top of all the TikTok trends. Why? They're on Instagram, they're on Twitter, they're everywhere else. They're getting reposted and reshared everywhere else. Like that's the type of content people are consuming right now, right? So think about your creative strategy and see if there's any ways that you can craft content like that. I'm working with a couple of small fashion brands that are focused on that. Like, how do we create TikTok? Like, can we understand TikTok? What's the biggest trend we can capitalize on right now, and can we turn that into an advertisement that leads into sales? So that would be the big thing that I focus on right now.
Yeah, that's interesting. I freely admit I rely on my team to tell me what's happening on TikTok so that I can then look a bit cooler in everyday life, because I don't have it myself. Brilliant, thank you. Mike, going to come to you next. What are some important strategies that most e-commerce merchants overlook?
I think one thing I've heard a lot today, Oliver kind of started it, Callum talked about it a bit, has been testing. And I think one of the things that has been very successful for my business has been just continuous testing. So certainly Callum talked about like listening to customers and gathering their feedback and acting on that. But I think you should always be testing new things, right? Testing new creative, testing new programs, figuring out whether something works. As you find, emails that are going out to customers, A/B testing those emails, figuring out whether you can find a message that attracts a higher response rate or not, whether you can get more reviews using some technique or not, whether your pricing's correct. What does an increase in price do to your product? What does a sale do to your product? I think the constant, at least like it's come up a bunch of times here, and I think the constant of successful businesses is that they're never standing still. They are constantly testing, they're constantly learning. And you can build a really very successful business as long as you're always learning and trying new things. And I think the moment you stop trying new things and the moment you stop testing whether something else is working, that's really when the business dies. But you take a long-term approach to it. Continuous improvement over the long run makes a big difference, 5-10 years down the road sort of thing. So if you've got that longer term vision, just small little tweaks and improvements every day, every week, turn out to make massive impact, years down the road. So I think that would be the one, be something that I think that we've learned in building Rewind. And one thing that I think we've seen customers be really successful as is just don't stand still and always be trying to learn and test new things.
I think that's a really great point. It's something I've been kind of learning myself, I think, a lot over the last couple of years. People talk about levers a lot. There are lots of different levers you can pull, and sometimes the tiniest little shift will make the biggest difference versus a huge brand building campaign or something. So I think that's a great piece of advice, looking out for those opportunities all the time. And anybody want to add to that? Any important strategies that you think e-commerce merchants might be overlooking?
From a paid social standpoint, I just want to add that you should probably be aiming to try and be profitable at every part of your funnel. So for Facebook ads, 90% of our ad accounts all optimize for conversions, top of funnel, middle funnel, and bottom of funnel. So our net new prospecting, new user acquisition campaigns, we're also aiming for a specific CPA. We're also aiming for a specific purchase return on ad spend, right? So that's something that gets overlooked a lot. A lot of people, will set up traffic campaigns to just try and generate traffic, and then set up retargeting campaigns or remarketing campaigns to generate revenue. But what you're doing really is diluting the traffic that's going to your website, because Facebook is going to be focused on just generating you cheap traffic as opposed to qualified traffic. Right. So that's something that gets overlooked a lot. Yes, there's time and places for the other objectives. And yes, this can change because of iOS 14, but that is the current strategy that's working the best to drive the most amount of revenue across the board.
Brilliant.
You know, something to add to that too, real quickly too, something we've seen work in order to be able to lower the cost of ad spend, and also to be able to pick up on you know, faster time to monetization and revenue too. We have some we have some really interesting technology that allows us to be able to embed our two tap or our swipe up to join across really any media channel. It can be organic, it can be paid. And so, you know, if somebody is super interested in maybe something that you're running with an influencer marketer, something you've got on Instagram, whatever, you just put a little pixel in there, you can tap on it or can swipe up, and they're gonna join the text program. And that's really how I think that you can start to differentiate yourself too, was being able to pick up on the source in which they join, have a curated campaign to welcome them at that point in, and then use the things in which they were doing on those social channels beforehand to actually drive towards deepening their relationship with you, and also to pushing further in the conversion funnel. We see that a lot these days, and are seeing a use of our platform in ways that, especially on the influencer marketing side, that I think probably would astonish folks with the results of what's happening. But it all boils back to meet the customer where they're at. Those with closer affinity will take an action, use something from a UGC perspective that then drives to value, and don't overthink your strategy too. So.
Mm-hmm. And to add on to the point of customer journey, make sure you're serving different creatives for different parts of the journey. Don't be sending, past purchasers or your past customers the same ad that you're serving to your new customers, unless of course you're promoting a new product. But your customer's experience is going to be dependent on your advertisements as well. So if they've never heard of your brand, right, your advertisement should speak to that fact. But if they have heard about your brand, or they've added something to your cart already, don't speak to them like you've never spoken to them before, right? That creates this foreign experience, right? So when you're thinking about your creative strategy, make sure you keep that in mind.
Great. Those are all brilliant tips. Thanks, guys. Talking about testing and trying new things, and Mike mentioned earlier in this session that people have a lot of different Shopify apps and things that they test. So we have a question here from, we have two questions around this. The first is from Alicia, and she'd like to know what the #1 app or tool that you'd recommend for brand new businesses. I'm sure we'll probably all say our own. But John would also like to know, one of the biggest challenges with having so many awesome marketing tools is integration and orchestration. So what a software provider is doing to be better integrated, how do you know if each tool can send an abandoned cart message? How do you know which one should? So I guess I'm going to condense those questions into one and ask, how do you juggle having different apps effectively? And from a loyalty line perspective, I think it's a really good question, because we try not to think about loyalty just in isolation. We know that there are going to be loads of different apps, so it's about how can you use them together. So how can you use loyalty line and an email provider to make your email open rates better? How can you use reviews.io and loyalty line together to get more of that user generated content? All those kinds of things. So I think I guess my answer to that would be look at all of the apps that you have and see how they can work together rather than viewing them in isolation. And I've stolen that one a little bit. Does anybody have anything to add?
I totally agree with. Oh, sorry, Oliver.
No, go ahead, Colin. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Mike. Yeah, I totally agree with what you just said. Whereas just look at the apps that you're going to use, and don't just look at them in isolation. Look at them how you're going to be using the several apps together. I mean, there's obviously Loyalty Line, Reviews.io, and Klaviyo and Gorgeous is like this mix at the minute that's very popular. And it's just making sure that each one is doing its bit, and it's passing information down the chain, sort of thing. They've got to all work together. That's the thing. I mean, we have a whole team just working on the different integrations, whether that's integration with Loyalty Line. I've been working today on Gorgeous, the ticketing solution, and working on that. And you've got to make sure that when you pick a provider in any niche, that it works with your other current app stack.
I'll throw in something too that just I think a lot of times when I've talked with marketers and and spent time with them on like what are they trying to ultimately achieve, and maybe what pain points are they having right now too. Oftentimes a marketer will express candidly what's like a symptom of a pain problem, or not really be able to articulate clearly what's your end goal and objective, and how are you going to measure again towards success with that too. And oftentimes what I have found, just because of the myriad of different types of technologies out there to support brands these days, is that the way in which we're all identifying customers and matching them across our various technology platforms is something that if you don't ask that when you're evaluating, like how are you actually going to merge this contact here, know that Allison is coming here, what does that ID model look like? It's almost near impossible to really start to think about your overall strategy, like across all these different techs. But candidly too, it's actually impossible to even really fully orchestrate between even channels specifically if you don't have your ID model, right? So it's like, I always say like identification is the crux of orchestration and personalization, but the ID model specifically should also be an integral part of your evaluation process too. You should always ask that. It's like, how are you going to fit in with like maybe an email address or a unique ID into this platform too? I think people forget about that in a lot of instances. So it's all about the data, and that starts with an ID first.
That's a very, very good point. Thank you. Mike, did you have something to add there?
No, I think I would just very quickly, actually. I think the good thing is that a lot of these e-commerce apps are getting to points of their life where they're raising a lot of money, which allows them to build open APIs. And so you're seeing a lot of Shopify apps, for instance, starting to raise some really serious money, which allows them to build larger teams, which will help with integrations. So, Klaviyo's one, Gorgeous is another, we've recently raised. So I think the good news is that I think it may not be great right now, but it should be improving over the next few years as the app marketplace gets a little bit more mature.
I think that's a great point. And I think, hopefully it's testament that we're all sat here today having the conversation, and, I think we definitely want to make everything work together as well as possible. Oliver, did you have a point on that one? I think you were ready to jump in.
No, I think everyone pretty much said it. Okay. Think about the integrations. Think about how your marketing stack works together. Make sure that you're not just using apps for the sake of it because you read an article and it says to use it. Like look for the problems that you're trying to solve, and then find a solution for that, and make sure that application meets that solution, and then works well with the other ones that you're trying to use. We actually have a new application that we're working on. It's called Motion, that helps with creative reporting. So for people that are in Facebook ads right now, you understand the difficulty in actually analyzing and trying to optimize your creatives. And Motion is actually that solution for it. Can't say too much about right now, but there is a beta feature for it, opt-in for it right now. So if you're a media buyer in the space that's looking to dive deeper into your creatives, and big push for creatives and testing new creatives this year, I would definitely recommend that application.
Fantastic. Well, definitely stay tuned for that. Okay, I'm sorry to say that's all the time we have for questions, and that's it for our Accelerate 2021 campaign as well. So thank you to everybody who submitted questions. I know we have a good few that we didn't actually get to there. So as I said, we'll do our best to respond in our follow-up content. Stay tuned over the next couple of weeks, or please do reach out to any one of us individually as well. Thank you so much to Oliver, Callum, Mike, and Alison for joining us today. That was a truly amazing way to wrap up our Ask Me Anything sessions. I think we're all really grateful for your insight and your expertise. To everybody listening and watching, a big thank you to you as well. Don't forget that the Accelerate 2021 ebooks and AMA recordings are available online, and we'll be sharing all the answers to the questions that we've covered in these sessions as soon as we can. Thank you again to our speakers. It's great to have you today, and goodbye everybody for now. Hope to see you online again soon.
Thanks all.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.